In this video, I want to cover a few different coiling techniques. The use of these larger coil structures helps to build depth as well as fill some space in each piece. We're going to go over a few different coil structures in this video. I just wanted to show you this piece as an example for how those structures could be used. The start to any of these more complex coil patterns is pretty simple, taking one wire and wrapping it around the other. For this one, to give it a little bit more texture, I'm using 18 gauge half round with about 6 inches of 22 gauge half round wrapped around it. This process can be a bit tedious. One thing I like to do to help it go a little bit quicker is bending 90 degrees into your center wire and holding firmly at the other end. Use that as a lever to twist it around a little bit quicker. Pay careful attention that it doesn't overlap itself and start to coil back the opposite direction. You want to make sure it continues to feed down the naked end of the wire. Here's a close-up view of our first coil. This same process could be repeated using round wire, square wire, or half round wire like I used, and each one will produce a different product. Right here is an example for where I used half round wrapped around square to create a thicker, more interesting coil. Now that we have the basis for simple coils, we can move on to something a little bit more complex. For this one, I went ahead and wrapped 28 gauge round around 22 gauge half round. I have here a piece of 21 gauge square that we're going to wrap it. To start this coil, I take the shorter exposed end of this coil that I made and wrap it around my 21 gauge square. I like to use square because the hard angles of the shape give it something to lock to, whereas if I was to use round, the wire tends to kind of spin around it unless you hold it pretty tight. And in the same way, I like to make a 90-degree curve to it, so I have a little bit of a handle to work from. I'm just slowly winding this coil around. I'll try to go slow so this video stays in focus. And here's our coil. Now to finish it, make it one more uniform piece, I like to take another piece of 28 gauge round and feed it into the cracks in between the coil we just added. To start that, start at the bottom in between the cracks of that 22 gauge half round. And just rotate it around, feeding it into that crack. Structure. I'll do a quick close-up video of this one as well. For this last coil, I have 3 strands of 24 gauge round with 6 inches of 30 gauge round wrapped around them. First, I want to hold them so that my thumb pinches them together right where the coil ends. If you have a clamp, you can clamp it in that same spot as well. Pinching from the other side, begin twisting the wires together till it begins to form this shape. To fill the gaps in this little twist and complete the coil, I'm going to take 3 strands of 24 gauge half round. These are about 3 inches long, and I'm going to wrap them with the flat face out. just to give this coil a little bit more of an interesting texture. Around one side, I went ahead and locked the half round. And I'm just going to trace it through this channel. Wrap it around the other side. I'm going to repeat the same process with the next two, wrapping around one side of my 3 pieces of 24 gauge. Slowly filling those gaps between the twists of wire. One more to go. Now to finish this coil, I like to twist it through my nylon tips just to kind of tighten everything up and flatten the profile of the coil a little bit. I'm just putting a little bit of pressure on it as I go through. You can use an infinite variation of different shapes and sizes of wire to create different textures using just these 3 simple coil methods. By breaking these coil structures into shorter segments, I can get all the depth that I'm looking for without adding too much bulk to the piece. If you have questions or feedback, leave me a comment and I'll get back to them as soon as possible. These comments really do help me make the best videos possible, and I really want to make sure that they're as helpful to you as I can. If you found this tutorial helpful, subscribe to my channel for new videos every Tuesday. To see more of my work, follow me on Instagram or check out my website. Both links will be in the description of this video.